Do, do, do. Let's start with that. Shabbos! Shabbos!
Someone has to do some good editing on this.
I think that's what Michael's job is. Hank the Cowdog, The Case of the Hooking Bull, Book 18, Chapter 1, Watering the Shrubbery.
It's me again, Hank the Cowdog. It started out to be a normal summertime day. Drover and I were asleep on our gunny stack bed under the gas tank, although I wasn't entirely asleep. Very seldom do I indulge myself in 100% sleep because, well, just think about it. There's no telling who or what might come onto the ranch and do who knows what. Let us say that I was in a light doze, listening to Drover grunt, wheeze, and snore in his sleep. Perhaps I had a few matters of business on my mind, but not many. And for sure, I wasn't thinking about the huge, horrible hooking bull in the north pasture. Maybe I should have been, because before the day was over, that monster of a bull would better not reveal any more of the story. I hate to scare the kids too badly, too soon. This bull belonged to the neighbors. See? And he had been tearing down gates and fences and causing a lot of trouble. Slim and Loper had run him out of the pasture 3 or 4 times, but he kept coming back and destroying fences. You probably know how much your average cowboy enjoys repairing fence in the heat of summer. Not much by the second or third time he starts thinking of naughty things to do to the party who is destroying fences. But doing naughty things to such a big, mean, huge horned creature isn't as easy as you might think. The problem comes from the fact that bulls are pretty good hands at fighting back. Oops, I wasn't going to reveal any more. Yes, this is going to be a pretty scary story, so use your own judgment. If you have a weak nervous system, you might ought to find something else to do and leave the story alone. Where was I? Oh yeah, under the gas tank. I leaped to my feet and took a deep, luxurious stretch. I was about to kick Dover away and outline the day's work when I heard the screen door slam up at the house. Dover heard it too. His ear jumped, his eye popped open and yelled,
Scraps!
And in a flash, he was gone. Dover, wait, come back here. He came paddling back.
What's wrong?
What's wrong is that you cheated. Do you think it's fair for you to leave while I'm in the middle of a stretch?
Well,
Of course it's not. That kind of shabby trick I would expect from Pete. but I'm shocked that you would try such a thing.
Well,
If we can't play fair, Dover, we shouldn't play at all.
I guess not. But I was hungry.
Everyone's hungry, Dover. But the kind of hunger we need in this world is a hunger for fair play and manners.
I guess so.
Are you ashamed of yourself?
Well, I guess so. I've always wanted to be a good dog.
You know you have, son. And I know you will be. I gave him a pat on the shoulder to make him feel better. Now we'll start this thing all over again. And to do it right this time, on the count of 4, you may race up to the yard gate.
4?
That's correct.
I thought everybody started on the count of 3.
I will leave on 3. You will leave on 4. That way you won't be tempted to cheat again.
Oh, good. Thanks, Hank.
Anytime, Dover, anytime. I was the first to reach the yard gate. There I found, no scrap, but the gate was open. Leaving the yard gate open was a transgression of Sally Mae's law. And I could think of only one party on the ranch who might do such a thing. Hint? He was 5 years old, walked on 2 legs, made lots of noise, and often had mischief on his mind. If you guessed Junior the Buzzard or Slim Chance the Cowboy, you're wrong. The correct answer is Little Alfred. Yes, Little Alfred was bad about leaving gates open, and I had a hunch that this was some of his work. I confirmed this hunch by subjugating the area around the gate to a sniffatory analysis. I don't want to scare anybody with these technical terms. A sniffatory analysis means pretty much the same as checking the area for scent. But those of us in the security business, and I'm talking about those of us who live with it day and night, tend to refer to things in heavy-duty technical terms. I mean, it's just second nature to us. And I guess we forget that most of the world doesn't understand big scientific world words. I'll try to keep it as simple as possible. But you must bear in mind that all at once, this seems a little boring. Okay, where were we? Yargate. That's where we were. I had a run, a SA of the area around the Yargate. And yes, it turned up positive for little Alfred. The little stinkpot was running loose since I couldn't hear him making sound of bulldozers or dynamite. I suspect that he was up to no good. I crept up the hill and checked it out. Ah, yes. There he was, roping chickens in front of the machine set. That was good, clean entertainment for the boy. Roping cats might have been even better, but I noticed that Pete was nowhere in sight. Pete was no mountain of intelligence, but he had figured out that rope business. The moment little Alfred stepped out the door with the loaded rope in his hand, Kitty tended to vanish. And somehow the world always seemed a better, brighter place when Pete disappeared. Well, the boy was busy, happy roping chickens. So I went back down to the yard gate to run a more thorough search for scraps. It was then that I heard Dover's voice.
Hank, have you counted to 4 yet?
Not yet, son. We're at 3.5 and holding. Just be patient.
I'll try, but I sure could use some scraps.
I understand, Dover, but we mustn't jump the count. The entire universe is like a giant clock with mathematics as its brain. If we ignore the numbers, there's no telling what might happen.
What?
No! I sniffed out the ground just outside the gate. Nothing, not a single trace of egg, bacon, or even burnt toast. For a moment, I considered going through the gate into forbidden territory, into Sally Mae's yard. In other words, but I was well aware that dogs weren't allowed there. I was also very much aware of the consequences of getting. On the other hand, she was nowhere in sight. And little Alfred just might have left a few juicy morsels of breakfast scraps within the fence. And rather than run the risk of letting Pete devour all the scraps, I decided to make a small penetration of the yard. My front paws crossed the line. I waited and watched. No sign of Sally Mae or her broom. I moved forward, causing my hind paws to cross into the danger zone. Still no sign of Sally Mae. Well, this could mean only one thing. She has softened her position on dogs in the yard and had finally realized that a yard with dogs is a safer yard, a happier yard, a better yard in every way. And it's true, a yard without a dog is like a house without a home. Well, now that she had come to her senses on that score, I felt as though a heavy burden had been lifted off my shoulder, instead of creeping and cringing, cowering and crunchy, flinching at every little sound for fear I might be thrashed with the broom. I loosened up and began to enjoy my new freedom. I was so proud of Sally Mae for working out a compromise on the yard business. I mean, even your bigger, toughest breed of dog can admire a nice, well-kept yard with its mowed grass, edges, neat little patches of flowers, here and there shrubbery. And speaking of strawberry, I passed one of her strawberries and noticed that it had never been marked. Can you imagine that? This poor little strawberry had been on the ranch for what? 2 years, 3 years? A long time. And and it had never been more. The poor, lonely little shrubbery. Well, you know me. As long as I have an ounce of strength and an ounce of fluid left in my body, I'll be glad to share it with Shrubbery. And I did. And just to be sure that Pete got the message, I gave it 2 coats.
Leave my shrubberies alone, you nasty dog! Scat!
The voice sounded a lot like Sally Mae. And when the first rock bounced off my ribs, oh, I was almost sure that it was, oh, Sally Mae speaking. You see, she kept a small pile of rocks beside the back door, almost as though she had planned all along to use them. Well, stray dogs, or someone who had penetrated this Gethsemane of her precious yard. What we had here was simple case of mistaken identity. And rather than run the risk of further confusion, I ran for my life and moved my business underneath the car, which was parked just beyond the R&D. From this vantage point, I peeked out at the field of battle and noticed that Slim and Loper had joined her on the back porch. Slim was loaded down with suitcases. Loper was carrying baby Molly, a diaper bag, and a fold-up high chair. It appeared that someone was leaving the ranch.
The end.
Abilene, prettiest town I've ever seen.
And we're live.
Chapter 2, Code Name, Abilene. From a bunker position, I homed in on their voice frequencies and picked up these bits of information. Number 1, Sally Mae and Loper were gone to Abilene to attend the wedding of someone. 2 people. 2 people were getting married, a man and a woman. Number 2, one of the alleged persons to be wed was Sally Mae's cousin. Number 3, it appeared that Loper had resisted the idea of attending the wedding, arguing he had a month's work to do on the ranch and no hope of getting caught up. Number 4, to which Sally Mae replied,
if it was a team roping, a rodeo, or a dogfight, you'd be caught up in a New York minute. But when it comes to my kinfolks, you always seem to be snowed under.
Number 5, Loper seemed to have no answer to that. He scowled up at the cloud, tugged at his necktie, and mumbled,
This thing's killing me. This thing's choking me to death. I'll have brain damage before we reach Guthrie.
Number 6, Slim wore his everyday cowboy clothes and a big smile. I got the feeling that he was enjoying all of this. Number 7, Sally Mae pointed out that wearing a tie once or twice a year wouldn't kill Loper. And even if it did, she just might enjoy the insurance money, whatever that meant. Number 8, Slim laughed out loud. Loper glared at him and his lips formed words I couldn't hear. So there you are. Those were the clues I amassed from my observation point beneath the car. Pretty impressive, huh? You bet it was. Oh yes, one last detail. All at once, baby Molly began to cry. Loper bounced her around in his arms and handed her over to Sally Mae.
Here, Ma, your daughter's calling you.
Sally Mae took the baby and got her settled down. Then she turned a pair of steely eyes on Slim.
Slim, I'll be honest. I have some misgivings about leaving you in charge of my house and child.
He nodded.
Yes, ma'am. I can understand that. Sure can.
You will feed my child something while I'm gone, won't you?
Oh, yes, ma'am.
Vegetables?
Oh, you bet. Lots of vegetables.
He needs a bath tonight and brush his teeth after every meal.
You bet.
At bedtime, I usually read him a story.
Uh-huh.
And then I tuck him in and we say our prayers.
Yep.
Sometimes he wants a glass of juice at bedtime.
Uh-huh.
So if you want to make him a glass of orange juice, that will be fine.
Okay. Orange juice.
Slim, can you remember all of this?
Oh, yeah, you bet.
Maybe I should make a list.
Sloper eased her down the sidewalk toward the car.
Sorry. Everything's be fine, hun. Old Slim might not look very smart, but he's real pretty stupid.
This is no time for joking.
Sally Mae, we're only gone for 2 days.
Pompeii was destroyed in 15 minutes.
Han, Slim can't even find his hip pocket in 15 minutes.
I'm not feeling any better.
Shall we go or shall we stay home?
By this time, they were standing right beside the car. Their feet, ankles, etc., were only a matter of inches away from my nose. Sally Mae was wearing a dress, don't you see, which meant that her ankles were sort of bare. For some strange reason, it was just an impulse, see, sudden impulse that happened before I could think about it. All at once, it occurred to me that I should, well, lick Sally Mae on the ankle, you might say. Maybe she hadn't seen me under the car, and maybe she wasn't expecting anyone to lick her on the ankle, because she sure took it the wrong way.
Ah.
Yes, I'm almost sure caught her by surprise. Way she jumped back and kicked the car door all in one rapid motion. It appeared to hurt her foot, but the good news was she missed my nose.
What's wrong, hun?
Something licked me on the ankle, and I have a pretty good idea who it was.
Her face appeared upside down in a little slot of daylight between the car and the ground. I whapped my tail several times upon the gravel drive. I tried to squeeze up a big friendly cowdog smile as if to say, oh, I guess that was your ankle, right?
Stop licking me. I have to go to a wedding this afternoon, and I don't want to smell like a sewer.
Okay, fine. If that's the way she felt about it, by George, I would just pack up my licks and take them somewhere else. But she didn't need to screech at me like that. Dogs have feelings too. In many ways, we're very sensitive. And all that screeching and yelling and so forth has a dilapidating effect on our something, inner being, I guess. So after having my inner being smashed and crushed, I crawled out from under the car and went slinking off with my tail between my legs, sat down beside the fence, some 10 yards away from Sally Mae, and proceeded to beam hurtful looks at her. She didn't notice the hurtful looks. Instead, she turned to Slim and said,
And speaking of dogs, I don't want any dogs in my yard while I'm gone.
Yes, ma'am.
And I don't suppose we need to discuss dogs in my house.
Well, Slim shifted his weight to the other leg.
Now, I'm pretty strict on that, Sally Mae. These dogs don't get away with much around me. They sure don't.
Sally Mae took a deep, slow breath.
This is probably a mistake. I'll probably regret this for the rest of my life, but if we're going to make these wedding, we'd better go.
Loper turned to Slim.
Can you run that bull out by yourself, or would you rather wait until I get back?
Slim smiled.
One riot, one ranger.
Well, watch him. He's big enough to hurt somebody.
So am I.
Loper opened the back door and started pitching luggage inside. Sally Mae called little Alfred away from his chicken roping, and he came down the hill for the final ceremonies. Holding the baby in the curve of her left arm, she bent down and hugged the boy with her right.
Alfred, I want you to promise me that you'll be a good boy while Mommy's gone.
I promise.
And that you won't do anything Mommy wouldn't want you to do.
I promise.
Mommy will miss you. And
so forth. I've reported only part of the conversation between Sally Mae and Alfred. It went on for quite a spell, and I quit listening to it. You see, my attention had been drawn to a small detail that a lot of dogs would have overlooked. It suddenly dawned on me that after packing the luggage into the back seat, Loper had left the door open. Everything in this old world has a reason. A car door left open is part and parcel of this old world. Therefore, it has a reason. And it was my job to find the reason. In other words, why had Loper, a careful and precise kind of fella, left that door open? To air out the car? Nah. To load baby Molly into the back with the luggage? Nah. To let Sally Mae ride in the? No. I submitted this mystery to the funnel of logic, another of the techniques we use in the security business, and it funneled down to one and only one simple explanation. For private and unknown reasons, Loper wanted me to accompany them on their trip to Abilene and possibly even to attend the wedding. Why? I had no idea. The funnel of logic does not address why questions. It only deals with broad general truths and long-term trends. Well, a trip to Abilene wasn't exactly part of my scheduling for the next couple of days. Could I squeeze it in? For anyone else, the answer would have been a big, lymphatic no. I had much too much work lined up to be running all over the state of Texas. But for Loper and Sally Mae, you bet. Loyalty runs deep in my line of cow dogs. When duty calls, we are there, Johnny on the spot. It happened that Drover appeared at that very moment and said,
Hi, Hank. I got bored.
Never mind what you got, Drover. I've been called out on an assignment. Within minutes, I'll be leaving on a secret mission.
I'll be darned. Where are you going?
I glanced over both shoulders and dropped my voice to a whisper. We're not sure, Drover. The decoy destination is Abilene. The actual destination could be anywhere. London, Paris, Bangkok, Amarillo. A guy never knows.
Sounds pretty exciting.
Exactly. While I'm gone, you're in charge.
Oops.
I know, but we must take life as it really is. Take care of things, son. Goodbye. Before this emotional parting got out of hand, I turned away, squared my shoulders, lifted my head to a stern angle, and marched to the transport vehicle, which was waiting for me. I hopped in, found myself a place on the seat amidst the suitcases and high chair, and settled down for a long. Perhaps I had misread the signals. The secret mission was suddenly canceled, so to speak. After thinking it over, Loper must have decided that, well, just think about the risks. I stayed at the ranch, and never mind the details.
Go.
Chapter 3, Emerald Pond. As they pulled away from the house, Slim and little Alfred waved goodbye, and I found myself standing beside Drover again.
Well, that was a pretty short trip.
I gave him a wilting glare. My orders were canceled at the last moment.
There for a second, I thought Lopper was going to cancel you.
That was your interpretation of your impression. The actual truth, Drover, often lies hidden beneath the facts.
He looked pretty mad to me.
Drover, I feel you're trying to make a mockery of my misfortune, almost as though you enjoyed watching me get dragged from the car and pitched into the weeds.
Well, it did look pretty funny, I guess.
There, we have a confession. That will go into my report.
Oh, drat.
And in the meantime, let me share something with you.
Thanks, Hank.
You're welcome. I began pacing up and down in front of him, and as I often do when I find myself tugging at deep and difficult concepts, Drover, in the process of running this outfit and dealing with dim-witted employees, I've found that most situations can be improved when the higher authority, such as myself, employs 2 simple words.
I'll be darned.
Just 2 words, Drover. Simple words that have a magic effect.
Don't tell me. Let me guess.
His eyes rolled and set his lips in a peculiar shape.
Let's see. Happy birthday.
Nope.
Merry Christmas?
Wrong again. You'll never guess it.
Yes, I will.
That's 3 words.
Yeah, I know. But it wasn't a guess.
Oh,
Thank you?
you're welcome.
No, that was my guess. Thank you.
No. Of course, no, that's wrong too.
I'm sorry?
That's okay. I didn't expect you to guess it.
No, that was another guess.
Are you trying to be funny?
Not really.
Good, because this is not time to be funny. Now, what was your last guess?
I'm sorry.
I told you not to worry about it.
Yeah, but that was my guess. I'm sorry.
Yes, of course. No, that's wrong, and we're just about out of time. I will tell you 2 magic words that are most often used by efficient managers, bosses, top executives, generals, admirals, and heads of ranch security. He sat down and wagged his stub tail in the dust.
Oh, good. I can hardly wait. What are they?
I stopped pacing and whirled around, facing him with narrowed eyes and a worldly sneer. The first is shut, and the second is up.
Shut up.
That's correct. Keep those 2 words before your eyes and near your heart, Drover. Before them, repeat them, memorize them, and the next time you think you've seen me in an embarrassing situation, pull them out of your vast garbage heap of your mind, and in the meantime, shut up.
Okay, Hank. I think I got it.
Well, getting the run straightened out had taken longer than I had expected, but some jobs can't wait. Once the cat is out of the sandbox, you have to, I don't know, change the sand, I suppose. Well, when Loper and Sally Mae drove out of sight, Slim yawned, checked the location of the sun, and then looked down at little Alfred and frowned.
Well, Button, it's me and you against the world. Don't forget all them things your ma told you not to do. And in case she missed anything, you can just figure that the answer is no.
Okay, Swim.
I didn't hire on a no outfit as a babysitter, and don't you forget it.
Okay, Swim.
I'm too old and gripey and set in my ways to be putting up with green-eyed colt like you.
His gaze drifted over to me and Drover. I gave him a big smile, and he, well, appeared to curl his lip at me.
You and your 2 sous-pounds. I've got 53 jobs need doing in here, and I'm playing bed nurse to 3 stooges.
Well, we'll have fun, Swim.
I have my doubts about that.
Is it time to eat, Swim?
Eat? Good honk, son. Your mom's dust is hardly settled and you're already wanting to eat? How come you didn't eat yesterday?
I did. I'm hungry again.
Slim growled and shook his head.
What do you want to eat?
Oh, let's see. Ice cream.
No ice cream. Your mom gave me strict orders to give you nourishing food with plenty of vegetables. What kind of vegetables do you want with your Vienna sausage? How about some canned peas? Canned corn? That's pretty good stuff, that corn. All right then, stewed tomatoes.
I don't like stewed tomatoes.
Well, you're too hard to please. I ain't running a short order house for fussy eaters. How about some ketchup?
Okay, Swim, I like ketchup.
Then that settles it.
Slim hitched up his pants.
I'll fix us a bit of Vienna sausage with a side order of ketchup and crackers. We'll break out some crackers. Now that's a real genuine cowboy dinner.
And then we'll have some ice cream.
No, and then we won't have some ice cream. I don't want your ma telling the neighbors that I corrupted her child with junk food.
Slim yawned and stretched.
Boy, this heat makes me as loggy as a fat pup. Button, we may be forced to shut down the ranch and take ourselves a little nap after a bit.
Oh, Swim, I don't like to take a nap.
Slim bent over and looked the boy right in the eyes.
Yeah, but you will take a nap, because I'm going to take a nap, and I ain't about to close my eyes with you running all loose.
Okay, Swim, I'll take a nap.
That's more like it. I hate to be stern and cruel, but rules is rules. Law is law. Let's go to the house.
Slim yawned again and started toward the back door. Little Alfred gave me a wink and a smile and whispered,
I'll be out to play as soon as Swim falls asleep.
That was interesting. It appeared the little snap had some ideas of his own. Well, we dogs weren't invited to lunch, which was okay. I mean, we had other things to do, and if Slim thought he was too good to share his meal with his 2 loyal, hard-working ranch dogs, that was fine. I wasn't too fond of Vienna sausage anyway, although if he had, but he didn't. Well, it was definitely a hot summer day, and I was carrying around a heavy coat of hair, and all at once the timing seemed perfect for a nice roll in the Emerald Pond. Emerald Pond, you might recall, was my own private bath and spa. It lay about halfway between the house and the corrals, shaded by large elm trees, and fed by mineral springs whose life-enhancing trickle could be traced to the overflow of the septic tank. Many a time I dragged myself to the edge of the Emerald Pond, wondering if I could summon the energy to wade out into those healing waters. And we're talking about tired and exhausted, sometimes even injured, burdened down by all the responsibilities of running a ranch with very little help or cooperation from anyone else, solving one mystery after another, working day and night, and yet somehow finding the time and energy to bark at the mail truck every morning at 10 o'clock. Really messed up, in other words, but 5 minutes of rolling those fragrant waters had never failed to snatch me back from the edge of the brink and restore my spirits. and it was into those very waters that I now plunged. I waded out brisket deep and collapsed, rolled around and kicked my legs in the air and indulged myself in the kind of joyous barking that comes down to a cowdog at such moment. That done, I scampered out into dry land and gave myself a good shake and rolled in the grass and leaped to my feet, a new dog. In the meantime, Drover had ventured over to the pond's edge and tapped one paw into the water. I just can't understand. I was on the point of giving the little mutt a lecture on healthcare and beauty aids when my ears picked up the sound in the distance. I froze and listened. What was that?
Well, I think it was the sewer.
No, an unusual sound. I lifted my ears. There it is again. Drover, unless I miss my guess, someone has just come out of the house and slammed the screen door.
And that means they didn't come out the window.
Exactly. Now, the only question remaining is, who could it be?
Yeah, and that depends on who came out the door.
Exactly. And we're about to find out. Come on, Drover. To the yard gate. On the double. And with that, we went streaking away from the banks in the Emerald Pond and made it lightning dash to the house. Little did I know or suspect that within an hour, I would be forced to eat strawberry ice cream, and even littler did I suspect that I would be given a ride in a spaceship. You probably don't believe that, but just wait and see.
Chapter 4, Running Scientific Tests on Strawberry Ice Cream. It was little Alfred who had just come out of the house. He was standing on the sidewalk in his jeans and a t-shirt and boots, and he was calling our names.
Here, Hanky. Here, Dwovu.
You know, there's something special about a little boy calling his dogs, and it's especially special if you happen to be a dog, as I happen to be. It makes a guy feel. As I went trotting up to the yard gate, I was shocked to see that little Alfred's mouth was covered with blood. Okay, so unspeakable villain had punched my little pal in the mouth and perhaps even knocked out several of his teeth. And nobody who punched a little kid around deserved just what he was fixing to get. And what he was fixing to get was the head of. On the other hand, he wasn't crying, which was a little puzzling. You'd think a boy who had just been slugged in the mouth by a bully would have, and went streaking through the yard gate, vaguely aware that the yard was forbidden territory, but more than vaguely aware that Sally Mae had left the ranch. In other words, what she didn't know, she would never find out. But even more important, if she had known that I was rushing into forbidden territory to defend her little boy against the attack of some heartless bully, she would have been the first to put a thorn in my crown. I rushed to his side, I barked and wagged my tail, waiting for him to reveal the location of the brute. On the other hand, why was he laughing? And why did he pinch the end of my nose? Well, the least I could do, it seemed to me, was to clean up his face a little bit. And so ketchup? Okay, it appeared that we had gotten ourselves all stirred up over. Drover had jumped too hasty. Sometimes we get faulty readings on our instruments, don't you know? And the boy had been eating ketchup, see, and a fair percentage of it had ended up on his face is all. No blood, no violence, no bully to take care of. I'd sort of suspected ketchup from the very beginning, but a guy can't really follow his hunch until he runs a more detailed analysis. Don't you see? Well, that was a nice turn of events, and I went ahead and cleaned him up, knowing that his mother would have done the same thing if she'd been around. Ketchup is pretty good stuff, and the little task turned out to be more pleasant than I had expected. Yes, I just kept cleaning and cleaning until the boy pushed me away and said,
Quit wicking me on the mouth, Hanky.
at that point, I stopped wicking him on the mouth, so to speak, and returned all 4 paws to the ground. Sally Mae would have been proud. The boy's face was spotless. It was then that he opened the screen door and called us over, and with a twinkle in his eye, he said,
Come on, doggies. Let's go in the house.
I looked at Drover, and he looked at me. Oh, did you hear what he said, Drover?
Who?
Whom do you think?
Well, I don't know, little Alfred.
Very good. Did you hear what he said?
I think he said the house is wet.
No, you garbled the translation. He said, let's go in the house. In kid language, wet means let.
I'll be darned. What would he say if the house got wet?
He would say the house is moist.
I'll be darned. Do you reckon a pipe broke?
What?
I said, how'd all that water get in the house?
I looked deeply into his eyes and wondered what kind of terrible injury had caused such a mess. Drover, you've missed the whole point of this conversation. Little Alfred has invited us into the house.
Not me. I think I'll pass.
Sally Mae is gone for the day, and she'll never suspect a thing.
Yeah, but you know about me and water. Just give me the good old dry land. That's the place for me.
I heaved a sigh and shook my head in despair. Fine, Drover, you stay out here and snap at the flies. I'll accept Alfred's invitation and go inside. You'll be sorry, of course, but you can't help it that you're a total moron. I turned my thoughts away from the depressing tasks of carrying on a normal conversation with Drover. Little Alfred was holding open the screen door and pointing the way inside. I didn't know what to own this honor, but it seemed only decent to accept it. I went through the door and sat down in the utility room. Little Alfred closed the screen, being careful not to let it slam. Oh, yes, Slim must have been taking a nap, and the boy didn't want to disturb him. That impressed me. A lot of these kids would just go slam banging through the house and never give a thought to anybody else. Alfred had his flaws, that is, but you could tell that his mama had tried to teach him some manners. He gave me a wink and a smile and went tiptoeing into the kitchen. Exactly what the wink and smile meant and why he chose to travel on tiptoes, I didn't know, but I soon found out. He sneaky walked through the kitchen and pushed a chair up to the refrigerator. Frigerator, the ice door. He opened the top door. There were 2, a big one on bottom and a small one above it. Very strange. Fog rolled out of the top compartment. Several clouds of fog. My goodness, the weather must have been changing or something. He stuck his head and arm into the foggy compartment and came out with a great big grin on his face, for one thing. But what was that carton in his hand? A round carton. He left the door open, and the fog continued to roll out. He climbed down the chair, fetched a spoon out of one of the kitchen drawers. Then he sat down in the middle of the floor and told me to sit beside him. Okay, I can handle that. I sat down beside him and watched as he pried the lid off the top of the mysterious carton. The lid hit the floor and rolled around. I stared at the contents of the alleged carton. It was pink. It was hard. It smelled like something a dog might want. Well, eat, so to speak. I scooched a bit closer and watched this procedure with a higher level of interest. I mean, I take special interest in these kids and their activities, whether they're involved in church, school, 4-H, or, well, food. Food is a very important component in the development of a child. and it sure did smell good. Kind of sweet, almost like strawberries and cream. I watched as little Alfred took the spoon in his fist and dug into whatever it was. I watched with all the concern of a parent or guardian as he moved the spoon to his mouth. I moved my paws up and down and whined. I whapped my tail several times on the floor. I scooched even closer. Like any parent or guardian, I wanted to know what the boy was eating. I mean, these kids will put any kind of garbage in their mouths, and a guy sure wants to know.
Want some ice cream, Hanky?
Oh, so that's what it is. Ice cream, huh? By George, it had been a long time since I'd tested any ice cream. And yes, I felt it was my duty to check it out. He scooped out a big hunk and I gobbled it down. Strawberry ice cream, and pretty darn good. On the other hand, I'd never been one to heap to any scientific conclusions based on a single test, and I felt a certain craving. Need, that is, to submit the ice cream to a more rigorous testing procedure. Hence, when he offered me a second bite, I did what had to be done. Took it, chewed it up, swallowed it down. Boy, was that stuff good. But on the other hand, this was Sally Mae's child, and I sure didn't want to take any chances. Some kids are allergic to ice cream. See, makes them break out in hives and stuff. And they tell me that strawberry is the world's worst about causing hives. One more test run to be sure. I mean, if the boy had broken out in hives, I never would have forgiven myself. I took one last bite. And he took a bite, and then I took another bite, and that didn't seem fair. Him taking 2 bites to my one, and I whined and I thumped my tail until he came across with one last big scoop of test material. Boy, was that stuff headache? That stuff was delicious, but for some reason it was giving me a headache. I pawed the spot above my eyes where the pain had centered, and after a bit it went away. Hey, our tests had turned up a possible dangerous side effect. It caused headaches. Well, you know me. When duty calls, I get with the program. This stuff needed to be tested and tested and tested. Never mind the cost or sacrifice. And before I knew it, me and little Alfred had tested the whole entire carton.
Chapter 5, the spaceship episode. Well, I ended up getting 3 headaches out of the testing deal, but that was a small price to pay for all the peace of mind it brought. Alfred looked into the empty carton and grinned.
The ice cream's all gone, Hanky.
I belched, that is, and listened to a certain creaking noise in my stomach. You'd have thought that I'd just eaten a squeaky gate or something, the way it sounded, and I did notice a certain fullness about my midsection. Felt like I just swallowed an inner tube and a squeaky gate and half a sack of dog food and 3 bales of hay. Boy, I was one full dog. Alfred crossed the kitchen and went out to the utility room. Naturally, I followed. Had a little trouble walking, to tell you the truth, but I'm no quitter. I forced my legs to carry the load, and they did the job. But I was kind of glad I didn't have to walk very far. I suppose that we were going back outside, but he stopped in front of his mom's washer and dryer.
Hanky,
He whispered.
you want to go for a ride in a real spaceship?
Ride in a spaceship? Well, not really. Ordinarily, I thrive on adventure, but I had just done quite a bit of thriving on strawberry ice cream and spaceship, huh? I hadn't realized that Sally Mae owned one. I ran my eyes around across the utility room and didn't see anything that resembled a spaceship. On the other hand, there might have been a few things I don't know about spaceships, such as what one might look like. But as far as me making a trip into space right now, well, I had quite a bit of work lined up for the afternoon, and the thought occurred to me that a nap might fit in there somewhere. I mean, all that lab work and testing and stuff, and had left me feeling kind of full and drowsy. And come to think of it, I wasn't exactly sure where space was or how long it would take to go there. I had never been to space. Maybe we could ride the spaceship another time. Alfred opened the door, hatch, whatever, one of the clothes dryers, and pointed inside.
Hanky, this is my X-Wing fighter. It's a wheel spaceship and it can fly off to the stars.
No kidding. I peered inside. It looked pretty much like a clothes dryer to me. But again, I was no expert on space stuff. I had my hands full trying to run a ranch on planet Earth. The boy grabbed me around the chest and lifted me off the ground and tried to poke me into the cabin of the X-Wing fighter. I resisted his opportunity. I mean, let's face it, the kid had been known to pull pranks, and more than once I had been the victim. On the whole, little Alfred was a good boy, but he did have an ornery streak, and my trust in his motives did have their limits. In other words, I wasn't interested in being sent off alone into space in his X-Wing fighter. Now, he'd offered he'd offered to go along and drive the thing. Well, that might have been a different. But as far as my flying off into space by myself, no. I guess he figured that out because after trying several times to poke my back legs into the cockpit, he gave up and set me back on the floor. He pressed his lips together and frowned at me.
Hanky, what's wrong with you? Don't you want to ride in my spaceship?
I thumped my tail on the floor and, well, belched again. Sure was full of strawberry ice cream. And avoided the focus of his eyes. I hated to disappoint the kid, but this just wasn't the time for...
Oh, Hanky. Okay, Hanky, well, I'll go in first. Then you can join me.
Well, maybe and maybe not. We just have to take this deal one step at a time. But his offering to go in first was definitely the first step. Sure enough, he climbed into the cockpit and set himself into well, there really wasn't a seat in the thing, just a round something or other made of metal. Looked kind of uncomfortable to me, but he settled in and didn't seem to mind. Then he took I guess it was a steering wheel, although I couldn't really see very well. He took the steering wheel in both hands, and I'll be darned if that spaceship didn't make a roaring noise. You know, motors and jets and engines and rockets, whatever you call those things. At first, I thought Alfred was making the sound. He's pretty good at loud noises. But then I wasn't so sure. By George, it sounded pretty real to me. So maybe the thing was an X-Wing fighter after all. I couldn't imagine why Sally Mae had bought a spaceship and installed it in her utility room, but you never know. Maybe it was one of those new models that served as a spaceship part of the time and clothes dryer part of the time. The boy did have a 15-second burn on his engines and then shut them off.
Come on, Hanky, get in and let's go for a ride.
Well, why not? I coiled my legs under me and hopped up into the cockpit and took my place in the co-pilot seat. Alfred took the controls again, fired his engines, and away we went at a high rate of speed. After a bit, Captain Alfred came to the radio.
Captain Alfred to Hanky, approaching planet Venus.
I gazed out the porthole. I guess it was, gazed out the porthole, and sure enough, there was a planet Venus passing before our very eyes.
Captain Alfred to Hanky, approaching planet Oklahoma.
By George, there it was. Planet Oklahoma in all its splendor.
Captain Alfred to Hanky, I'm fixing to leave the ship and make a spacewalk. You drive now.
Roger, Captain. I took over command of the ship, did a quick scan of the instrument panel just to be sure all systems were up and functioning. Everything checked out. While I was absorbed in the instrument check and making double sure we didn't fly too close to planet Oklahoma, Captain Alfred slipped into the spacesuit and began the spacewalk maneuver. He exited the ship through the pothole and slammed the hatch. All at once, it was pretty dark in there. Captain Alfred grinned at me through the pothole window, and waved. Then I seemed to hear him climbing on top of the spaceship. Maybe he was checking for leaks or something, or maybe, huh? Fellers, something was a happening to the ship. Mayday, mayday, red alert, code 3, DEFCON 5, yikes. All at once, I lost control of my ship. My controls were dead, the instruments blacked out, the ship went into a deadly spiral dive, and holy smokes, I was tumbled around and around and around. And around and around and bumping my head. The cabin temperature was rising, and I caught the scent of heated metal. We had a fire in the cockpit. We were falling out of control. I was tumbling and flying all around and getting beat to smithereens. I don't know how I did it, but that very last moment, I pulled her out of the deadly spiral dive and executed a smooth landing. Next thing I knew, little Alfred had opened the hatch and was pulling me out of the burning cockpit. Just in time, too. I mean, the smoke and flames had just about gotten me. He pulled me out of the burning wreckage. Boy, what a crash. And let me tell you, he looked scared. I could understand that. It had been pretty tough for both of us. But even tougher for him. Yeah, at least I was inside the cockpit. That poor kid had been up on top of the ship. We were just as lucky he didn't lose him. At that point, he said something I didn't understand. He said,
Sorry, Hanky. I wondered what that button would do.
Button? Didn't make any sense to me. The kid must have been scared out of his wits. Didn't know what he was saying. Well, you can't believe how glad I was to plant my paws back on good old planet Earth. It would be a long time before I ever climbed into another one of those spaceships. I checked my body for damage. No busted bones, no blood, no serious cuts. Just lots of bruises that didn't show. In other words, I had somehow managed to walk away. But I did feel dizzy, and I noticed a certain queasy feeling in my stomach. All that tumbling around and around and around and walking straight seemed out of the question, and I staggered across the floor, feeling dizzy and more than slightly queasy in my stomach. And all at once, I thought of strawberry ice cream and wished I hadn't. If a guy knew for sure that he was going to crash a spaceship, the last thing in the world he'd want to do would be strawberry. You know, I was feeling kind of sick. Of course, even your most experienced pilots get a touch of, boy, I was feeling lousy and dizzy. Ran to the trash can and bounced off the kitchen cabinet. Just the thought of strawberry ice cream made me want to, uh-oh. In spite of the injuries and dizziness, I managed to stagger through the kitchen and into the living room. I needed to go outside is what I really needed, but the door, there wasn't any time, so I found this nice little spot behind Sally Mae's couch. It was quite isolated and dark. I guess that nobody had ever visited that deserted piece of carpet, and probably nobody ever would. Hence, nobody would ever know. I felt much better now. Most of the dizziness and so forth had vanished, and I made my way around the front of the couch and headed to the back door. But as I passed the front of the couch, a long, bony hand reached out and grabbed me, and a mysterious voice said,
What are you doing in here, Pooch?
Chapter 6. A cat attacked by the couch monster. Have you ever run into a couch monster? Neither had I. They aren't too common in our country, but it certainly appeared that I had just been grabbed by one. I'm not sure what causes a couch to turn into a couch monster, but I can report what I learned about this one. When I entered that living room, the couch was just a couch, but as I was leaving, it suddenly sprouted an arm that reached out and grabbed me and acquired a voice, a terrible voice that rumbled,
What are you doing in here, Pooch?
Scared the living daylights out of me. Maybe my guilt feelings about being in Sally Mae's living room had something to do with how badly it scared me. Because I was indeed feeling a few pricks of guilt and remorse about, well, being in the house and so forth. And I sure wasn't expecting to be assaulted by a couch monster in a semi-darkened living room in the middle of the day. A guy hears about those things happening to other dogs, but he tends to think, nah, it'll never happen to me. But it sure as heck did happen to me. When that hand reached out and grabbed me by the scruff of the neck, I let out a squeak, lifted the hair on the back, my back, and went into full stampede to the left. It was then that I saw the ghostly form rising from the couch. Yes, sir, this ghost or evil spirit, call it what you wish, this thing in human form rose out of the cushions of the couch and sat up. It had a long nose, a beard, and hair down in its eyes. I bristled up like a cornered coyote, bared my fangs, and barked as I'd never barked before. That should have done the trick, but to my astonishment, the thing continued to rise until it left the couch from which it had come, like a wisp of smoke rising from a fire. It planted its feet upon the floor and reared up to its full height, made claws with its hands, and twisted its eyes and mouth into a horrible mask. And even then, claws extended into a grabbing and killing position, it began lurching toward me, uttering a terrible growl that froze my blood in its veins, vessels. It froze my blood in its vessels. You think I didn't bark at that thing? I not only gave it the whole book on barking, but I also retreated a few steps to the northwest, just in case it did. It came after me. Hey, that was all I needed to know about couch monsters. They ate dogs. And with that, I said goodbye to barking and went ripping out of the living room and into the kitchen. Did a little slipping and sliding on that slick linoleum floor and vanished into a closet in the back bedroom. It was there in the darkness of the closet that I heard a thunder of laughter and then a familiar voice.
What's wrong, Hanky? What did you think I was going to eat you?
Okay, we had it there. Once again, Slim we've discussed this stupid childish cowboy pranks. He had pulled that stupid childish monster trick on me so many times you think a grown man could find something better to do with his time. But the bottom line is that a dog can't afford to take chances. Once in a while, he'll come out on the short end of the, let's just drop it. I crept out of the closet and peered around the corner and into the kitchen. I wagged my tail. Sure enough, there was Slim, pulling on his boots. When he looked at me, he chuckled to himself and said,
"Look at the hair on that dog's back."
I barked at him one last time, just to let him know what I thought about his twisted sense of humor.
Now, Hanky, don't be bitter. We was only having a little fun.
Little Alfred appeared at that moment, whistling a tune and looking up at the ceiling. Slim forked him with his eyes.
Say, Hot Rod, who let that dog in the house?
Oh, we just swept in, I guess.
Uh-huh. And if your mama was to walk in right now, I might be wearing her iron skillet around my neck. Let's try to keep the livestock outside, here.
Okay, Swim. It was an accident.
Yup.
That was odd. All signs and symptoms of the ice cream experiment had disappeared. The carton and the lid, and somebody had even shut the freezer door. Slim would never know the full extent of what he had missed. He finished pulling on his boots and stood up.
Well, we'd better saddle me a bronc and see if we can put that old looking bull back where he belongs.
He started toward the back door, but then stopped and sniffed the air.
Boy, I need to wash my socks. Smells like a sewer in here.
Funny, I hadn't noticed the smell of his socks, but then I'd had my mind on other things. We went trooping out of the house, picked up Mr. Look at the Clouds at the yard gate, hooked the stock trailer to Slim's pickup, and pulled down to the corrals. Slim had kept up a young bay horse the night before. He caught him and led him into the saddle and threw a saddle on him. While he tightened the cinches, he talked out loud to himself.
If I have to rope that old bull, I might wish I'd taken a better horse. I've never roped anything big on this owl-headed thing, and there's not much telling what he might do.
He stopped and thought a moment.
In fact, I believe I'll just... Nah, it's too hot to gather the horse pasture. We'll do what needs to be done, won't we, Button?
Little Alfred smiled.
If you'll wet me,
Slim led the horse out of the gate and lashed it behind him.
I wish I could, son, because roping bulls is sometimes hard on clothes and old men.
I whooped me a chicken today.
I'll bet you did. When it comes to slinging that twine, you're a regular holy terrier.
Slim loaded his horse into the trailer. Little Alfred watched.
I like to whoop. I'm a pretty good whooper.
That's fine, Button. Just keep a throwing and keep a learning. One of these days you'll be as good with a rope as I am and probably just as rich.
Are you rich, Swim?
Slim hitched up his jeans and smiled.
Well, now, I'm rich in the things that matter to me. I'm proud of who I am and what I do. To me, that's rich. There's a song that says just what I'm trying to tell you, Button. Let's see if I can remember how it goes.
I don't know how old Slim could even carry a tune, but by George he did, and here's how it went.
Another cowboy day. Morsels and pitching just another cowboy day. Just another cowboy day.
I went to the barn and fed my old horse. Me and that rascal have been through the course. He ain't all that good, but he ain't all that bad. Old Dunny's the best friend that I've ever had. Old Dunny and me, we cut through the breeze as morning was painting the tops of the trees. Oh Lord, give me more. That's all I could say. Just another cowboy day. Yeah, just another cowboy day. Digging them post holes and pitching that hay. Just another cowboy day. Just another cowboy day. Just another cowboy day. Digging them post holes and pitching that hay. Just another cowboy day. Just another cowboy day.
By the time Slim had finished the song, little Alfred was playing bulldozer in the dirt with a piece of wood.
Well, Button, does that make any sense to you?
Nope, but it's a pretty song.
Slim smiled.
Sometimes it don't make much sense to me either. Well, load up. We've got things to do and places to go.
Can I ride in the back with my doggies?
Slim frowned.
Why don't you ride up front with me? Your ma would feel better if you did. And you never can tell. I might need some help driving.
Can Hanky and Drover ride up front too?
Now, Button, we don't need to be spoiling them dogs. Next thing you know, they'll think they got a constitutional right.
Please, Swim, just this once.
Slim shook his head and moved his lips.
Oh, all right, just this once.
Yippee! Come on, doggies, we get to ride up in the front.
The three of us made a dash for the pickup, while Slim came along behind, talking to himself.
I know better than to start this foolishness. Once you spoil the ranch dog, he ain't worth snooting then on. Course, then we two dogs born worthless. But we ain't gonna make a habit of this riding in front. You hear what I'm saying? Just this once.
Okay, Swim.
Slim opened the door and the three of us climbed up on the seat. At the mailbox, Slim stopped and looked both ways before he pulled onto the Caliche Road. He wrinkled up his nose.
Boy, this pickup sure stinks. If that's my socks again, I'm gonna burn them things.
We turned onto the road and off we went to the pasture. If I had known what was waiting for us up there, I might have chosen to stay at home.
Chapter 7. We meet the horrible Harry hooking bull. There were two roads that led up to the north pasture. One went straight north through the middle pasture, and the other looped around to the west. The one that looped around to the west and followed the canyon pasture fence was the longer of the two, which naturally meant that the other was the shorter of the two, right? It was shorter, but you had to open two gates to get to the north pasture. Slim took the long route, so he could get by without having to stop, get out, open the gate, get back in, drive through, get out again, shut the gate, get back in, and drive on. You see, little Alfred wasn't quite big and stout enough to open and shut pasture gates, and while Slim was old enough and stout enough, he had a small lazy streak and weakness for using cattle guards instead of gates. So we took the long route up to the north pasture. As you will soon see, this will become a crucial piece of information in the unfolding drama of the hooking bull. If little Alfred had been faced with two pasture gates to open, well, you'll find out soon enough. As soon as we turned off the main road, little Alfred started pestering Slim to let him drive the pickup. Slim growled and grumbled about the hazards of doing such things, but since he's been the one who'd brought the subject up in the first place, he didn't have much chance of winning that argument. So the boy crawled over in his lap and took the steering wheel in both hands. I'll admit, this made me nervous. It reminded me of the time I'd gone on the spaceship ride with the little stinkpot. I won't say that his driving had caused that crash, but I won't say that it didn't either. But this time, we did it all right. Kept the pickup mostly in the tracks without too much wandering around in the pasture. After he'd steered a while, with Slim running the gas and the brake, he decided he needed to handle that department too, so Slim gave him a tryout, running the gas and brakes. First time he hit the brake pedal, me and Drover got ourselves introduced to the dashboard. After that, he didn't punch it so hard, but we dogs took no chances. We were braced and welded against the back of the seat. Slim let him drive all the way up to the cattle guard that led into the north pasture, and then he took the controls back, saying,
Button, that cattle guard's about as wide as it needs to be, and I'll take her from here.
When we crossed the cattle guard, Slim scanned the horizon and started talking to himself.
Now, let's get organized here. This time of day in the summer, them cattle are most likely to be at the windmill. We'll check there first for that bull.
He threw the gear ship up into Grandma Low, and we started down a washed out trail that led into a ravine. When we reached the bottom, we saw the windmill up ahead. Sure enough, 50 or 60 cows and calves were lazing around the water tank.
There he is,
said Slim in a low voice.
And look at the size of that feller. That boy is a lot of bull.
I followed the direction of his gaze, and yes, that was a big bull, all right, with a nasty hump in his back and a wide head like a catfish and a mean-looking set of horns. Drover was staring at the clouds and hadn't seen the bull yet. You know, Drover, if Slim needs any help on this assignment, it might be a good time to let you get some experience.
Really?
There's no substitute for experience, son. And I know that I have a tendency to hog all the excitement. Yes, by George, we'll just let you solo on this one.
Gosh, thanks, Hank. Are you sure I can handle it?
Well, that's the whole idea behind hands-on training, Drover. Finding answers to those little questions, and yes, I'm confident that you will learn a great deal from this experience.
Oh boy, I can hardly wait. Just bark at him?
Oh yeah, bark at him and maybe bite him on the nose if he tries to attack. His eyes went blank.
Attack? What kind of cow is this?
Well, it's not exactly a cow, Drover, more of a bull than a cow.
A bull?
That's correct. Just an ordinary garden variety of bull who happens to be in the wrong pasture and has forgotten how to get back home. Nothing special, in other words. All at once, the runt stopped looking at the clouds and squinted his eyes at the cattle in front of us. I heard him gulp.
That wouldn't be him right over there, would it? With the hump in his back and the big horns?
Don't worry about the hump, son. Camels have two humps, and they're the friendliest animals you ever saw. The hump means nothing, almost nothing at all.
Yeah, but look at those horns.
Once again, the horns mean almost nothing. The idea is to stay out of the way of the horns. I noticed that his eyes had crossed. Drover, something's wrong with your eyes.
No, it's my leg. It's killing me.
What I'm looking at is not your leg unless you've moved it up around your nose.
No, it hurts to move it. Just the least little movement brings on this terrible pain. Maybe I'd better sit this one out, Hank.
Forget that, son. You're fixing to make a solo run.
Oh, my leg.
By this time, Slim had unloaded his horse and led him up to the pickup. He pulled all his cinches down tight.
Button, I'm going to try to drive that bull back where he belongs. If he'll drive, I'll take him up that hill and through that gate yonder, and I'll be back in 10 minutes. While I'm gone, I want you to stay in the pickup. You hear?
The boy nodded.
Because if you get out and go fooling around with these baby calves, some of those mamas are liable to think you're a prowling coyote instead of Sally Mae's darling child. And one of them might try to get into your pocket.
The boy nodded.
Now,
Slim pressed his lips together.
if the bull don't want to cooperate, I may have to take more drastic measures, such as put on my nylon around his horns and drag him into the trailer. It could get a little western, so keep out of the way. Okay, Swim, but I don't want you to whoop the bull. Neither do I, Button, but that's up to him. I'll take Hank with me.
Huh? Eased down on the floorboard and tried to make himself invisible. Maybe if I flattened myself on the floor, he might think.
Hank, come on. I may need you to put some bite on that bull's nose.
At that moment, Drover spoke.
I think Slim wants you for something.
No, I think he's calling you.
No, he said Hank. I'm almost sure he did. And my name's Drover. So I guess he decided to put in the first string, and I'll just have to sit this one out.
I'll bet that breaks your little heart.
Yeah, I was sure looking forward to going around the two with that old bull.
Hank, get out of that pickup. Let's go.
I pushed myself up and noticed that my legs were trembling a bit. All right, you little weasel. I'll do your dirty work for you, but this will go in my report, every word of it.
Oh, rats. I'll walk from here, Hank. Maybe that'll help.
Thanks a lot, Drover.
Oh, it was the least I could do.
Yes, I'm aware of that, you little... It seems that Slim got impatient and reached in and grabbed me by the tail and hauled me outside, and that really wasn't necessary. I'd only wanted to take care of a little business with Drover, and Slim stepped into the saddle and pulled his hat down. Then he glanced down at me.
You ready for this, Pooch? Let's go exercise that old bull.
He rode forward through the herd. The cattle stared at him with big, stupid eyes and parted to let him through. I fell in behind the horse. My enthusiasm for this project was, well, running at a fairly low level, mainly because my involvement was depriving Drover of valuable, much needed experience. Slim maneuvered his horse around until one animal stood in his path. The bull's ears were cocked and he was watching the horse's every move.
Hiya, go on, bull. Get on out of here.
The bull sensed that he had been cut off from the herd. He moved to the right and Slim cut him off. He moved to the left and Slim turned him back again. The bull shook his head and stood his ground. Slim took down his catch rope, pulled the loop down to where it was just a knot, and let out about 7 feet of slack. Then he flipped the rope so the knot popped Mr. Bull on the nose. Whap! That got his attention. He whirled around and started trotting away from the herd. Well, that had been easy enough, I figured. This might be a good time for me to install my anti-bull procedures. Barking at the top of my lungs, I rushed past the horse and sank my teeth into the left rear hock of this large but cowardly. One detail a guy tends to forget about these bulls is that while they're very large and appear to be slow and dim-witted, they're actually none of those things except large. I mean, it's hard to believe that a bull weighing in at 1,300 or 1,400 pounds can turn on a dime and give you the change. But they can, and he did, and I sure wasn't expecting him to do that. And I don't think I'll tell you what happened next.
Chapter 8. What happened next? Hey, I had worked bulls before. I knew they were capable of inflicting big damage if they got half a chance. But I also knew that once you get a bull turned and running off in the right direction, 97.4% of the time, he'll keep going and won't turn to fight. So I played the percentages, right? When the numbers are on your side, everything's supposed to turn out just fine. And what more can a dog do? Okay, I'll tell you what happened after I bit that stupid bull on the heels. But I'm not proud of it, and there's no reason for blabbing it all over the country. I sank my teeth into his left hock, little suspecting that he might kick me into a low polar orbit with the right one, and never dreaming that he could do it in the blink of an eye. But he darn sure did. Kicked me dead center in the rib cage, and I thought I had been run over by a large truck. All at once, I saw red checkers and skyrockets exploding behind my eyes. I couldn't breathe, I couldn't think, I couldn't move. I don't know how far I flew through the air, but it wasn't far enough. I landed nose first in the side of a sand hill. I lay there on the ground, gasping for breath and trying to restart my heart, when I began to realize that this killer hooking bull wasn't finished with me. It wasn't enough that he'd broken the law of averages and taken a really cheap shot and kicked the absolute stuffing out of me. No, he wanted more. And here he came. Any bull that would have been would beat up on a handicapped dog is beneath contempt. But he loaded me up on his horns and pitched me into the ozone layer of the atmosphere. I landed in an awkward heap in the middle of a sagebrush. And I remember with perfect clarity the thought that came to my mind when I hit. Enough of this nonsense. Let's go to the house. But the drama was just beginning. As it turned out, Slim popped the bull again and tried to turn him back to the northeast. But Mr. Bull seemed to be enjoying this, and instead of running away, he dropped his head and charged Slim's horse. They got out of the way just in time. Slim rode a short distance away and started building a loop in his rope. His eyes had settled into a tight squint, and the muscles in his jaw were working.
Are you all right, Hanky?
Gasp. Please. No, not really.
Get up and let's teach this old general who's boss around here.
No thanks. I already knew who was boss. Slim shook out his loop and held it shoulder high. He moved his horse toward the bull and tried to coax him into running. And I knew why he tried to do that. You see, it's much easier to rope an animal that's running away from you than to rope one that's facing you. I knew that, even though I myself don't rope. I had watched Slim and Loper in action before, and I seem to have an amazing memory for such details. It's just part of being a cow dog. But the bull didn't go for it. He was on the fight, and he had no intention of running anywhere. He perked his ears, bellowed, pawed the ground, and dared Slim to make the next move. And Slim did. Instead of throwing a standard head or horn loop, as he would have done if the bull had run away, he turned his horse to the left and flicked out a hula hand. That hula hand is a slick loop. It's quick, like a cobra striking its victim. No twirl, no warning, just swish and jerk slack. Slim's a pretty good hand with that hula hand, and he nailed his loop to Mr. Bull's horns. It was a great throw and one of the biggest mistakes he'd made all week. He popped his slack, turned his horse, gave him the spurs, and headed for the stock trailer without even looking back. He should have looked back, because at that very moment, Mr. Bull turned and ran in the opposite direction. I saw it was coming, and I tried to bark a warning, but it was already too late. The die had already been cast into the wash tub. Also, I couldn't even breathe, let alone bark. To appreciate what happened next, you must remember, 1, the home end of Slim's rope was tied solid to the saddle horn. 2, he was riding a young horse that probably had never been married to a fully grown bull. 3, horse and bull were running hard in opposite directions. And 4, nylon ropes don't break. When they hit the ends of that rope at the same time, the wreck began. It jerked Slim's horse completely off his feet, and he landed on top of Slim. I mean, all I could see of that cowboy was 2 hands, 1 boot, and part of a dirty felt hat sticking out from under the horse that was wallowing around and trying to get up. I had witnessed a few wrecks in my time, but this one looked about as nasty as I could imagine, and it wasn't over yet. The jerk whipped the bull around so hard that he swapped ends and came out of it facing Slim and the horse. And instead of teaching him a lesson, it just made him madder than ever. That bull's head was shaking with rage. I heard him snort. I heard little Alfred scream. I heard Slim let out a groan from underneath the horse. And then before my very eyes, the bull lowered his head and charged the horse. And holy smoke, all at once we had a terrorized colt on top of a smashed cowboy, being charged by a huge horn-hooking bull that was mad enough to finish the job he just started. And don't forget that rope. The horse and the bull were still tied together by that rope. And don't forget that the head of ranch security had been wounded in action and was in no position to rush to anybody's defense. I mean, I was still trying to get my first breath. I was crippled and badly damaged and beaten to a pulp. The bull waded into the wreckage and started working that poor colt over with his horns. And if you think that colt was poor, just think about what was underneath him. Slim. Wham, wham, thud, snort. Oh, that bull had no mercy. Good grief, hadn't he done enough damage? Did he have to keep on beating on that poor colt with his horns? By George, when I saw that, I started getting mad. I jacked myself up off the ground and yelled, "Drover, are you going to stand there and watch this outrage? What are you waiting for? Get your skinny, worthless stubtail out here and draw some blood."
Well, you go first, Hank, and then I'll come.
I can't go first, you moron. I'm wounded and damaged beyond repair. We got a cowboy on the ground and he needs help right now. And you're next in the chain of command. Attack! Charge! Red alert!
Oh my gosh. Well, I guess I can. I sure hope this old leg of mine.
I'll give him credit for trying. He jumped out of the pickup and ran straight for the bull, yipping and squeaking. I'm sure the bull got a chuckle out of that. A sawed-off, stub-tailed squeak box coming out on the field of battle to do something or other. When Drover was about 2 feet away, the bull made a run at him. Drover not only changed directions in the blink of an eye, but he also destroyed half the sagebrush in that pasture, getting back to the pickup. The bull watched this with his wicked, heartless eyes, and it even appeared to me that he was smirking. Then he turned back to his main source of entertainment, beating up on the colt. By this time, the colt had wallowed to his feet. He was moon-eyed and trembling all over, waiting to see what this dragon of a bull would try to do to him next. My eyes darted to Slim. He was lying face down in the sand. He hadn't moved. I could see that he needed my help. I took a limping step in his direction, and well, Mr. Bull got the message across to me that I should sit down and shut up. So I sat down and shut up, so to speak. I had felt a sinking spell coming on anyway. Just taking those 2 steps had worn me to a frazzle. Also, I needed to plan my next move, don't you see? All at once, Slim lifted his head and let out a groan. Boy, that was good news. There for a minute, I thought maybe, but no, he was still alive. He placed the palms of his hands on the ground and pushed himself up to a kneeling position. Good heavens! I hardly recognized him. His eyes and mouth had vanished, and his face had become a featureless white mask that was mostly sand. His face had gotten mashed into the sand, see? And there for a second he brushed the sand off his face and let out another moan. He sat there for a moment with his head hung down and left hand resting on the right side of his rib cage. He blinked his eyes and looked at me.
Well, Hank, we've gotten ourselves into a real jackpot here.
With some effort, I hobbled over to him and began administering special certified Red Cross CPR licks to his face. Those certified licks will bring a guy around as fast as anything. I had given him several before he pushed me away and said,
"Quit!"
Then he turned and studied Mr. Bull, who stood between us and the pickup. He was watching our every move and appeared to be thinking bad thoughts.
"Hank,"
said Slim, setting his teeth against the pane.
"I've messed up some ribs and maybe some more things too. I need to make it to the pickup and get back to the house. Reckon you can keep that bull off me?"
Me? Keep the... Hey, I was pretty badly injured myself. I'd already learned about as much from that bull as I cared to, and besides... He put his hand on my head and rubbed my ears.
"See, I might be messed up inside. That colt mashed me pretty bad. What do you say? Can you help old Slim?"
I thought it over. Sure, I could help him.
Yep. Chapter 9. This is the scary part. Holding his ribs, grinding his teeth against the pane, Slim pushed himself up. The bull was watching. He snorted and dropped his head and poured up sand with his hoof. Slim took a step. The bull's head shot up. I could tell by the look in his eyes and the way he held his ears that he was fixin' to come a hookin'. Slim reached down and patted me on the neck.
"Okay, son, it's time for us to find out what you're made of. See what you can do."
It would be an exaggeration to say that I went streaking into the fight. I pushed myself up and hobbled out into the empty space between Slim and the bull. I glared at him, and he glared at me. I raised the hair on my back, stiffened my tail, and extended my neck so that my nose was pointing at him like an arrow. And then I unleashed a low growl. From the pickup, I heard Drover squeak.
Hank, be careful. He might try to hurt you.
And then little Alfred yelled.
Beat him up, Hanky. I hope you bite the snot out of him.
Behind me, I heard Slim groan and take a step. The bull's head snapped around and his eyes locked on Slim. He had just picked his target. He took a step towards Slim, and that's when I gave him some education on cow dogs. A lot of dogs would have barked and gone through a little warm-up procedure. Not me. I figured what we needed here was a strong and lasting impression. When you want to make an impression on a bull, you don't bark, and you don't bluff, and you don't talk. You merely take a death grip on the nose and hang on. So I rushed forward, fitted my jaws around his nose before he had time to think about it. And then I went on to maximum crunch. Say, old bully didn't like that. He snorted and he bellered and he started slinging his head around. Since I was pretty well attached to his nose, he was slinging me around at the same time. I went up, I went down, I went in circles. I bounced off the ground and bounced off his horns and bounced off that big ugly hump in his neck. And yes, all this bouncing and crashing around did take a toll on my body. But the thought of slacking my grip on his nose never entered my mind. What did enter my mind after several minutes of this thrashing was that I might not live long enough to brag about this adventure. I was taking a terrible beating, but I knew that as long as I held onto his nose, I had a chance to survive. If he ever shook me off, then he could go to work on me with his horns and fellers. Maybe my jaws got tired. Maybe he gave his head an extra jerk. I don't remember. I mean, things were happening pretty fast. But all at once, the very worst thing that could have happened happened. He broke my hold on his nose and threw me off. I hit the ground hard. Before I could make another move, he was there on top of me, beating me, pounding me, mauling me with those huge horns. Left, right, left, right. I squalled for help, but there wasn't any help. Oh, Drover was yipping from underneath the pickup, and little Alfred yelled for the bull to
"Leave my doggy alone,"
as I recall his words, and that was about all the help I got. The blows hurt at first, but after a while I didn't feel much pain. With each blow from a horn, my head snapped around and I could hear a crunching sound deep inside my body, but there wasn't much pain anymore. I felt myself slipping away into a dream as darkness gathered around the edges of my vision. The circle of darkness grew larger, and the circle of light in the center shrank down to a tiny hole. What I could see through the hole was what was left of my life. I watched as it slipped away from me. Kinda hated to see it go, but this was the way I'd always wanted it to be. I'd always wanted to go out fighting for my ranch. Just before the light went out for the last time, I got some help from an unexpected source. While all this had been going on, that colt hadn't moved a muscle. He stood nearby, shivering and watching all the bloodshed with his big moon eyes. Well, all at once, something must have spooked him, because he took off running and bucking. Then he hit the end of that rope. He did get Mr. Bull's full attention. It jerked both of them down to the ground. Bully didn't like that, not even a bit. And when he got to his feet, he'd already decided to eat him a colt for supper. He dropped his head and charged. The colt screamed, jumped to his feet, started hauling the mail. Say, that was something to see. Those two heavyweights tied together on the same piece of string. First, the bull jerked down the colt, then the colt jerked down the bull. Then they both went down. I mean, it looked like a total disaster there for a while. But then they jerked the horn plumb out of Slim's saddle. That nylon rope was stretched like a rubber band, and when the bull pulled it out, it flew back and whopped old Bully right between the eyes. And all at once, it was over. The bull staggered away with blood dripping out of his nose. The colt bucked a few more times and nickered, and then he went to the trailer and stood there. And the dust that filled the air began to settle around us. Dust and silence. Next thing I knew, Drover and little Alfred were there beside me. Tears and dust had streaked the boy's face. He went down on his knees and threw his arms around me, hugged me a whole bunch harder than I wanted to be hugged right then. It hurt, and I yelled.
Hanky, get up. We have to take Swim home.
I tried to stand up, but I couldn't.
Hoey, get up. We have to go home.
I tried it again. Couldn't do it.
All right. I'll have to pick you up.
He tried to carry me to the pickup, but that didn't work. He just wasn't stout enough, and even if he had been, I couldn't stand the pain. Just then we heard Slim's voice. He had managed to crawl into the cab of the pickup, was sitting on the passenger side with his head propped up in his hand.
Button, come here.
The boy went over to the pickup. That left me alone with Mr. Day Late and Dollar Short.
Gosh, Hank, are you hurt pretty bad?
As bad as I need to be, thanks.
You're welcome. I sure meant to come out and help you, but when that bull, did you see how big and ugly he was?
No, I wasn't close enough to get a look at him, Drover. Was he pretty big and ugly?
He was terrible, just terrible. I came out to help you, honest, I did, but then oh, Hank, I feel so guilty. I don't know if I can stand myself anymore.
You'll find a way, Drover. I've got confidence in you.
Don't say that. Don't be too nice to me. I don't deserve it. Tell me I'm worthless and chicken-hearted. Tell me I'm a failure. Tell me I should stand in the corner for the rest of my life.
I would, son, but it talks to hurt. Hurts to talk.
Oh, this guilt is more than I can stand. You can't believe how much it hurts me to see you hurt. If there's anything I can do, Hank, anything at all, just tell me.
Okay, be quiet. I want to hear how Slim's going to get us out of this mess.
Sure, Hank, just anything. I'll be quiet, but I want you to know that...
Shh. He hushed, and I listened to what Slim was saying.
Button, here's what's got to be done. We've got to get me home, and I can't drive. If I put the pickup in Grandma Low, reckon you can steer it back home?
Me? Do I have the pickup? I don't think so, Swim.
Sure you can. You did it coming up here. I just kept it on the road, that's all. And if anything goes wrong, turn off the key.
Well, maybe. I can try.
Good boy. Now, I want you to walk over to that colt, real quiet and slow, and watch his reins. Then lead him over here as close to the pickup door as you can.
But Swim...
Don't be scared, Button. He was acting crazy because that bull was trying to hurt him. He'll be all right. Just be smooth and don't make any sudden moves. Talk gentle to him. Go on.
Alfred looked pretty scared when he walked up to the colt, but he did just as Slim told him. The colt's eyes got big when he saw the kid coming toward him, and he had rollers in his nose, but he stood his ground. Alfred caught the reins and led him over to the pickup. Slim reached out the window and unbuckled the cinches: back cinch, front cinch, and breast cinch.
Button, there's one more buckle and I can't reach it. It's under his chest, where the breast collar hooks into the front cinch. You'll have to get it.
Slim held the reins and talked to the horse, while Alfred reached under and unbuckled the strap.
Good boy. Now step back. I'm going to turn him loose.
Slim unhooked the throat latch and slipped the bridle off the colt's head. As the colt turned to leave, Slim grabbed the saddle and let it fall to the ground. The effort of doing all that seemed to wear him out. He leaned his head back against the cab and closed his eyes for a minute. Then he said,
Let's go, Button.
What about Hanky?
For now, we'll have to leave him. I hate it as much as you do, but we've got no choice.
Huh? Leave me alone in that big lonesome pasture? Holy smokes! Night would be coming in a few hours, and hungry coyotes would be out looking for a meal, and they were going to drive off and leave me there?
Three.
Okay, this is chapter 10. A buzzard falls out of the sky. Was this my reward for saving Slim from the bull? Was this the kind of thanks they give a dog for putting his life on the line and fighting for his ranch? Use him up and then leave him for coyote bait? Yeah, I couldn't help feeling a little bitter about it. I mean, I only had one life and one body, and it seemed to me that they were being a little careless with it. But on the other hand, what else could they do? I had tried to walk and couldn't. Slim was hurt and couldn't lift me into the pickup. Alfred had tried, and Drover.
Oh, Hank, we're going to leave you out here all alone. And boy, you talk about a heavy guilt. This might just do me in.
Drover, I got a suggestion.
Anything, Hank, anything at all. You just tell me what I can do.
All right. Why don't you stay out here and keep me company? There for a second, I thought his eyes were going to pop out of his head.
Stay? Keep you?
He started backing away.
You know, Hank, I'd love to do that, but I really would. But this leg, with the way that it is, I sure think I better. And I wouldn't feel right about leaving headquarters without a dog to take care of things. And maybe I better.
He turned and limped back to the truck. Thanks a bunch, Drover. And the next time you need my help, I hope you call a bull.
Thanks, Hank. I know everything will be all right. Oh, this guilt is terrible.
He hopped into the back of the pickup, and that was the last I saw of the little stooge. I looked around, and there was little Alfred standing over me. He bent down and petted me on the head.
Oh, we have to leave you, Hanky, but I'll come back. I promise I'll come back.
He bit his lip and ran to the pickup. Slim put the gear shift in neutral and started the motor. He told Alfred to step on the clutch pedal, and he shifted into first gear. Grand Molo, as he called it. Alfred let out the clutch, and the pickup lurched forward. With Alfred standing up in the seat and gripping the wheel in both hands, they made a circle in the pasture and began the long, slow trip back to the house, 2 miles to the south. The boy waved one last goodbye, and I heard Drover say,
"Oh, the guilt. Oh, my leg."
And then they were gone. The silence moved over me like a fog. My friends had left, the horse had left, even the cattle had left. I had never known such a lonesome feeling in all my career. About the only thing I could cling to was little Alfred's promise that he would come back to get me. But that wasn't much to cling to. I knew he couldn't drive in those pastures without Slim to help him. I checked the location of the sun. 5 o'clock was my best guess, which meant that I had 4 hours of daylight left before darkness fell and the local cannonballs began stirring around. My whole body ached, and that hot summer sun was burning me up. I put cannibals out of my mind and fell into a sleep and dreamed about cannibals, dozens of them, howling and circling in the darkness and closing in on me. I woke and saw that the sun had slipped almost to the horizon. I had slept for several hours. I glanced off to the south, hoping to see a plume of dust in the air that would tell me help was on the way. There was no plume of dust. Help was not on the way. My mouth was burning up with thirst, and I began to wonder if I could drag myself over to the stock tank and get a drink. I did a quick scan of my bodily parts and discovered, to my surprise, that all 4 legs appeared to be attached and even unbroken. I'm sure the hooking bull would have been disappointed to find out that after all his attempts to shred me up like so much paper, he hadn't even busted a leg. Well, if I still had 4 unbroken legs, maybe I could stand on them. I lifted my hind end, lifted my front end, and found myself standing on all 4 legs. I took a step. Now those legs were a tad wobbly, and I fell down a couple of times. And yes, the old body was beat up and sore, but I finally managed to limp and weave my way to the stock tank. The next challenge came when I tried to stand up on my hind legs, lean over the edge of the tank, and lap up some of that nice, sweet, cool windmill water. It was tough, let me tell you. But once I got the smell of that water, I didn't quit until I had lapped up a bellyful. And once I had gone that far, I began to wonder if maybe I could pull myself over the edge of the tank and take a little dip. I hopped and pulled and I tugged, and every one of those bruised muscles talked to me. But by George, I made it up to the edge and let myself tumble into the water. Oh, that was the most wonderful feeling. I was surrounded by cool, friendly water, and I found swimming quite a bit easier on my injured parts than walking. It was a very nice paddling around in that nice cool water. Only trouble was that when I tried to climb out, I couldn't. Seems that water in my hair had increased my weight just enough so that I couldn't get out. I swam another lap and tried again. Same deal. My first thought was that I would probably drown, but then I realized that by placing my hind feet on the bottom of the tank and hanging my front paws over the edges, I could stand up. That was a welcome discovery, because drowning in a stock tank just didn't fit into my plans at all. Well, there I was, more or less stranded in a tank of water, when I heard a flapping sound in the air above me. This was followed a moment later by a metallic ping, and a noise that I can only describe as a loud squawk, something like this. Awk, awk, awk. Then something large and black and ugly hit the water with a big kerplash. Kind of surprised me. Well, you know me. When things fall out of the sky and land in the water only a few feet away, I don't just stand there. I bark. Yes, sir, I barked. Since I was injured, it wasn't my usual deep, ferocious bark. But it wasn't all that bad either. I had a feeling that whatever had fallen into the tank would get the message. Well, the subject, creature, thing, whatever it was, came up sputtering and flapping its wings. That was my first clue. No, actually the second. The first clue, now that I began to focus my powers of concentration, had been big and black and ugly. To that information I added the flapping of wings, and bingo, I had sketched out the identity of the mysterious intruder. We had us a buzzard in the stock tank, is what we had. Now all that remained for me to determine was which of the two local buzzards had been dumb enough to fall off the windmill tower. Halt! Who goes there? State your name, rank, and brand of cereal at once.
Shut up, dog. You're supposed to be our supper, and I'm a-fixin' to drown if I don't get out of here. Junior, you get yourself down here and save my life. It was you that pushed me into that dadgum windmill fan and got me knocked off of that dadgum tower.
Well, you kept crowding me, and you should be so pushy all the time, all the time. You are so greedy. It serves you right.
Well, that's a fine thing for a boy to say about his own flesh and blood. His poor old daddy who scrimped and saved and tried to bring him up right.
When did you scrimp and save?
By this time, the pieces of the puzzle had fallen into place. What we had here was a buzzer named Wallace in the stock tank and another named Junior up on the windmill tower. There was a moment of silence, so I took the opportunity to say, "Excuse me, but it seems to me..."
Shut up, dog. This here's a family affair, and we don't need your old 2 cents.
He turned back to Junior.
When did I scrimp and save? Son, I've scrimped and saved 1,000 times over the years as I tried to teach you right from wrong and how to get along in a hostile world.
Yeah, but I mean lately.
Lately? All right. Well, maybe I've backslid a little, and maybe I haven't scrimped and saved as much as I should have. But that don't mean, son, I'm a-fixin' to drown. Buzzards wasn't built for swimming.
Maybe our doggy friend will help you. Hi, doggy.
I dipped my head at him. How's it going, Junior?
Oh, fine, except Pa fixing to drown to death in the stock tank.
Well, I could probably help the old wretch if he'd just show the courtesy of asking for it. Wallace thrashed and sputtered.
Forget that, Pooch. I ain't a rich bird, and I ain't got much to show for all these years of toil and woe, but I got my pride. Yes, I do. And I have never accepted help from my supper.
I shrugged. In that case, I hope you enjoy drowning as much as I'll enjoy letting you. At this point, you're probably sitting on the edge of your chair, wondering if I actually let the old buzzard drown. Yes, I did. Or let's put it this way. To find out if Wallace drowned, and if I was eaten by hungry cannibals, you'll have to keep on reading and go to the next chapter. I'm out of room for this chapter. See?
Chapter 11, A Buzzard Family Feud. Okay, we had one buzzard drowning in the stock tank and another buzzard perched on top of the windmill tower. Pretty exciting, huh? I lifted my head and spoke to Junior up on the tower. I've done all a dog can do, Junior. I guess you're about to become an orphan.
Oh, darn. He's so stubborn and greedy.
Hell, son, is that all you can say after all I've done for you? After all the wonderful times we've enjoyed together? Just think of all the many dead skunks we've shared.
Yeah, but you always got the skunk, and I got the stink.
No, I never. Sometimes you say the most hateful things, Junior. I can't imagine where you come up with them. But the point is that I'm a trying to drown.
Junior didn't say another word. Neither did I. We just watched as the old man thrashed and squawked and sputtered. His ugly bald head went under 2 times, and that second trip seemed to have made an impression upon him.
Say there, neighbor, I don't reckon you could spare the time to help a poor old buzzard who's down on his luck, could you now?
Oh, I might. Do you suppose that poor old buzzard could say, please?
No, I certain don't think.
His head went under again.
Yes, by crackies, I sure think we could. Dog, would you please grab a hold of me and spare me from the fate of drowning of death?
I dog paddled out to where he was and offered him a paw. He took the paw and the leg, climbed on top of my head, pushed me underwater, and hopped up on the rim of the tank. When I came up, he was sitting there, dripping water and glaring at me and the rest of the world.
That's what you get for trying to force manners on a buzzard. It ain't natural.
Does that mean the same as thank you?
No, it sure don't. I ain't saying thank you to no pot licking ranch dog. And in fact, I'm a taking back the please I just said.
Junior almost fell off the tower when he heard that.
You can't do that, Pa. You can't take back pleases once you've said them.
Wallace glared up at him.
Who says I can't? If I give it, I can take it back. If I said it, I can unsay it. If I offered it in the spirit of brotherhood, I can unoffer it in the spirit of true buzzardhood.
But Pa, he saved your life.
So? He's done the world a huge favor, and that ought to be a reward enough in itself. And he doesn't need me saying a bunch of mealy-mouthed thank yous that I don't believe in, and which no buzzard worth shooting would believe in. And you could take a lesson from that yourself, son, and quit carrying on like I don't know what and pulling on airs, because you ain't a little hummingbird, son. You're a buzzard from the long line of buzzards.
The old man turned to me.
And buzzards is buzzards, and we're proud to be buzzards. And buzzards don't say please, and buzzards don't say thank you, especially to dogs. And you can either put that in your pipe and smoke it, or chew it up and spit it out. I don't give a rip which.
Up on the tower, Junior gave his head a sad shake.
Oh, Pa, you're so terrible.
That's right, and proud of it too.
At that very moment, you won't believe this, at that very moment, I thought I heard music, real pretty music, and Junior started singing this song.
Sometimes, Papa, I think you are a dirty, rotten cad. You're my dad, but still, I think you could adjust. You simply must acquire some polish and some E-class. Saying please won't hurt your reputation, and in evident fact, it could help you some. It's evident dumb. the very one who's lent a hand and pulled you out of drowning from its tank. Son, I've tried to school you in the facts of buzzard lore. You're a bore, but still, I think you could adjust. You really must quit talking nonsense to your pa. Buzzards, by their very definition, are uncouth. That's the truth. What's dumb is showing courtesy and manners to the very dog we came here just to eat. Yeah, but where did I go wrong? Show some courtesy. Where did I fail? Because this boy talks nonsense doesn't mean you have a right to treat me like from his relative. I can't see very you. I won't say please. I push you north, and I hope that this ignoring does you good. Did you good?
When they were done with the song, the old man turned to me and he said,
And that's my last word on the subject. I don't want to hear any more about it. And Junior, me and you need to be scooting around for something dead to eat. And if we don't hurry, it's liable to be me.
Yeah, I'm about to starve.
We come here 2 hours ago thinking this silly dog was going to be the answer to our prayers. But here he is.
The old man gave me the evil eye.
You're a wasting our time, dog. And are you available for supper or ain't you? Just a simple yes or no. Never mind the details.
No.
Fine. Junior, with one simple word, this dog has just broke my heart into 13 pieces. I don't know what your plans are for the rest of the evening, but I'm fixing to get airborne and punt grub.
Then back to me.
But things change, puppy, and we'll sure enough check you out first thing in the morning.
And with that, he pointed himself into the wind, pushed off the edge of the tank, flapped his wings, and climbed into the evening sky. Junior grinned down at me from the tower.
He is just awful sometimes. Well, I guess I better go, or he'll be back and start yelling at me again. Bye, doggy.
See you around, Junior. And say, I like that song.
Oh, thanks. But Pa didn't hear any of it. But I'm glad you liked it. Bye.
He rocked back and forth 3 times, and with a loud grunt, pushed off the windmill tower, and he flew away. No sooner had the swish of his wings vanished in the distance than I heard another sound that sent shivers of dread down my spine.
Ow!
Coyotes! And they were close. Holy smokes! Darkness was coming, and there I was all alone in the pasture, too beat up and injured to climb out of the stock tank and run for my life.
Ow!
There it was again, the evening song of the heartless, hairy cannibals. The howls were close and coming closer. By now they had picked up my scent and were moving in for the kill. I could almost see their yellow eyes sparkling and the foam dripping off their deadly fangs. Crouched and shivering in my watery grave, I held my breath and listened. I heard the swish of their paws in the grass. I heard them belching and laughing Then, much to my dismay, I heard them tune up and sing the coyote sacred hymn and national anthem. Me just a worthless coyote. Me howling
at
at the moon. Me like
Me
to
like to
sing and
sing.
holler. Me crazy
crazy
as a
a
loon.
loon.
Me not
want
jobs
jobs
or
or
duties.
duties,
No
nor
church or Sunday
Sunday
school.
school.
Me just a
a
worthless
worthless
coyote.
coyote.
But
But
me
me ain't nobody's
nobody's
fool.
fool. I had heard those two verses before, and indeed, in better days, I had even sung them with Rip and Snort on several occasions. I had never heard them sing but those two verses, and wouldn't have bet a nickel that they knew any more. But now, for my very ears, they sang a third verse.
Me catch the smell of supper, floating in the breeze. With all this dust and pollen, it makes me want to sneeze. It smell like something yummy. It smell like something neat. It smell like a hot dog. And a hot dog me love to eat.
I didn't like that new verse, not at all. In fact, it made me very nervous to hear them out there in the darkness. I sure needed to get out of that stock tank, and all my instincts began screaming, "Run, run!" in the back of my mind. But running from heartless, hairy cannibals was a sure and certain way to get caught. I mean, you might as well try to run away from your own shadow. Once these guys locked into a scent and got on a trail, there was no stopping them, no escape. I didn't run. I couldn't have run, even if I'd wanted to. And so I hunkered down in the water and I waited like a helpless rabbit. Waited and listened to the sounds of my assassins as they came closer and closer and closer. I could make out their voices now. Rip and Snort. Oh, I recognized the tone of their belching. Well, maybe I could talk my way out of this. I had done it before. Rip and Snort were heartless brutes, but they had their weak spots. Maybe if... But then I heard another voice, and all my hopes were dashed. It was a deep and cruel voice. It belonged to Scraunch the Terrible.
Scratch! Think me come to end of trail. Here at Windmill, we find Big Yummy Ranch Dog. Oh boy.
And with that, Scraunch walked up to the edge of the tank and he looked inside.
Chapter 12, Saved Just in the Nick of Time.
Ugh, said Scrunch. Not see yummy dog supper in tank. Better we look around windmill.
Maybe you thought he would look inside the tank and see me there, huh? And then eat me alive? Well, that could have happened to one of your ordinary ranch dogs. But don't forget that those coyotes were dealing with the head of ranch security. I had a little bag of tricks, see? When I saw Scrunch's nose appear over the rim of the tank, I took a big gulp of air and went underwater. It was just dark enough by then so that he couldn't see me. Pretty clever, huh? When I came up for air, I heard them chasing around and yelling at each other. It really had them buffaloed. My scent was strong around the tank, and they knew I was somewhere close by, but they couldn't find me. And the more they looked, the madder they got, and the louder they yelled at each other. Snort blamed Rip, and Rip blamed Scraunch, and Scraunch blamed Snort. And after a while, they stopped looking for me and got into a big fight. You never heard so much snarling and carrying on. Well, I was sitting there in the water, feeling pretty proud of myself and listening to the brawl, when I happened to notice a sharp pointed nose appear over the rim of the tank. Uh-oh. Snort had decided to take a look around. I took a gulp of air and slipped under the water. I stayed under for as long as I could and then had to come back up. The same routine had worked on Scrunch, and I felt pretty sure that I could see Snort's eyes flickering in the moonlight. He was looking straight at me.
What that swimming around in tank?
Quack, quack, I said. I could hear his nose testing for scent.
That goose in there?
Quack.
Sound more like duck in there.
Quack.
Sound like duck, but smell like dog. Not make sense.
Quack, quack.
Sound pretty stupid, duck.
Quack.
Duck not say quack like that. Duck have different kind of quack.
Quack.
Sound very more like dog quack than duck quack.
Quack, quack, quack. He was sniffing the air again, and I began to worry.
Aha! Snort solved mystery of stupid duck. Stupid duck, not stupid duck at all.
Quack?
Stupid duck really hunk dog trying hide in water, and coyote plenty mad for stupid duck trick in water.
I have been exposed. Now, hold on just a minute, Snort. I can explain everything.
Snort not give a hoot for explain everything.
I was just taking a bath, see? Taking a normal, everyday kind of bath, and thought it might be fun to, play ducks. 2 more coyotes' heads appeared over the rim of the tank. Well, by George, look who's... I was telling old Snort. I'll admit, it sounds strange, a grown dog playing ducks in a stock tank, but if you'll just hear me out, I'm sure you'll agree. Scrunch ran his tongue over both sides of his mouth, a real bad sign.
Time for big eat. Hunk, get out, or coyote, get in.
I studied the faces before me, the gleaming eyes, the gleaming fangs, the hungry looks. So this is it. Is that what you're saying? 3 heads nodded. There's no chance that we could work this out on paper. All 3 shook their heads. In that case, boys, you'd better come and get it, 'cause it ain't no free lunch on this ranch. I swam to the middle of the tank and prepared to make my last stand. The coyotes yipped and hollered, and Scrunch came diving over the side. Scrunch, it's only fair that I tell you that I'm a black belt in water karate. He kept coming toward me. Listen, that deal with the duck was only a joke, honest. He kept coming. It's still not too late to... Before I could finish my sentence, he sprung at me, clamped his powerful jaws around the scruff of my neck, and plunged my head under the water. I had just about checked out of this whole world when, that was odd, Scrunch released his death grip on my neck and let me come up for air? That didn't make any sense, unless he wanted the fight to go on that more than that one round. But whatever, I accepted the offer and came up gasping for air, just in time to see 3 coyotes drag their dripping selves over the side of the tank. They ran through the beam of 2 headlights and vanished into the night. Headlights? I hadn't known any. Holy smokes, somebody had come to my rescue. Or was I dreaming? I heard a car door open and close. Then little Alfred's voice.
Hanky! Here, Hanky! I came back for you. Where are you?
Hey, I barked, I hollered, I moaned, I whined, and then I struck out swimming for the edge of the tank. When I got there, I was pulled out by little Alfred and, I'll be darned, Miss Viola, Slim's lady friend. And yes, Mr. Burden of Guilt was there, hopping up and down and spinning around in circles.
Oh, my gosh, Hank. When we didn't see you, we thought maybe the coyotes had got you. And boy, You talk about feeling bad about something. I wasn't sure I could make it through the night.
Well, thanks, Drover. In the absence of meaningful action, it's the thought that counts.
You bet. And boy, I've done lots of thinking. Sure have.
Well, Miss Viola picked me up and carried me to Slim's pickup and laid me on the floorboard. I was still wet, see? And on the way back to the ranch, I began piecing together the rest of the story. After they had left me at the windmill, Slim and little Alfred made the slow drive back to headquarters, where the boy and the controls and the pickup and Grandma Lowe. When they got there, Slim crawled on his hands and knees into the house and called Miss Viola on the phone. She lived down the creek, you might recall, about 5 miles below our place, and she came streaking up the valley to take care of Slim. She tried to load him up in her car and take him to the doctor, but he didn't have any great love for doctors or hospitals and anyway, by that time he had already diagnosed his own case. He had been mashed pretty badly by that horse, but the wreck had taken place in soft sand, so he'd come out of it with some bruises and cracked ribs, just the kind of things he would treat with wool fat, salty meat grease, and Aubergine Jr., and no doctor. So Miss Viola got him loaded into a bed and sent little Alfred down to the saddle shed for all that high-tech medicine. And after a couple hours, old Slim was back on the road to recovery. And it was then that little Alfred remembered that he promised to me and coaxed Miss Viola into driving into the pasture to get me. So there you are. When we got back to headquarters, Miss Viola carried me into the house and made a pallet for me on the floor beside Slim's bed. They discussed the pros and cons of letting me stay in Sally Mae's house, but they decided that since I had saved Slim from the hook and bull and had shown great, incredible courage on the field of battle, it was only right that I should be allowed to stay inside. Which was plenty fine with me. As beat up as I was, the thought of camping on my gunny sack bed didn't excite me much. And let me tell you, before she went back home that night, Miss Viola made quite a fuss over me and my injuries. She pulled all the burrs, moss, and mud out of my coat. She dug a few ticks out of my ears and gave me a good brushing. And what would you say if I told you she had me fixed some of warm milk with a raw egg mixed in? Honest, she did all that. Miss Viola not only had a good taste in dogs, but she knew how to make invalidism pretty darned attractive. I mean, I could have stood quite a lot of that kind of treatment. The next morning, she came back and fixed us guys a nice big breakfast. Would you believe scrambled eggs and bacon for me? Shucks. I made up my mind right then and there. If Slim didn't have sense enough to marry this gal, I just might give it a shot myself. Well, everything was just about perfect right up to the moment we heard the car pull up in front of the house. It was Loper and Sally Mae back from their trip, and suddenly I began feeling very uneasy about, well, being in Sally Mae's house for one thing. But then there was another little matter that weighed even heavier on my mind. It had to do with strawberry ice cream. Sally Mae was not overjoyed to see me inside the house. I could tell by the way her nostrils flared and her eyes widened. But Miss Viola handled it very well. She explained that I had saved Slim from being made into sausage by the hook and bull, and that she, Viola, had taken it upon herself to let me stay inside. By George, it worked. Sally Mae loosened up, smiled a little bit, and even came over and gave me several kind words and pats on the head. After all the hard times and misunderstandings Sally Mae and I had gone through, this was a major victory. But still, I couldn't enjoy it. I kept wondering what form of execution she would choose for me when she found, well, the strawberry ice cream. But you know what? Just at that time, when I was about to have a nervous breakthrough, Miss Viola came over to my bed, bent down, and whispered,
Now, don't you worry. I cleaned it up.
"What a woman! What an angel! I survived the day in grand style and lived happily ever after. Oh, were you wondering what happened to the hook and bull?" 3 days later, Slim went back on his feet, and, shall we say, thirsting for revenge, he and Loafer saddled the two stoutest horses on the ranch and went up to the north pasture. I'm told that to this very day you can see deep skid marks all the way from the windmill to the gate in the northeast corner of the pasture. The Hook and Bull got invited to a sledding party, and we haven't seen him since. Case closed.
We are coming towards the end. Tim, Karen, Weston, Corin, Anthony, Melissa, Allison, Michael, Bob, Christy, Rachel, Stephanie. Oh my goodness, look at all these people. Shabbos!